going to try and go through some uses of AI, both inside Photoshop and outside of Photoshop. I'm not going to cover, I think, what are the very well-known Photoshop tools like the remove tool. I think most people know that. And I also won't cover generative expand, where when you can, in the crop tool, you can just expand your palette and it'll fill in the areas. I think most people know about that, but I'll go into some other ones that other things that may be a little less familiar. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that you can save masks as presets. And because those masks are generated by AI, they can be automatically applied to other photographs. So, got to go share my screen now. Okay, hopefully you now see my screen, which has a whole bunch of stuff on it. I'm going to open up this image here. And I'm going to go into the mask tool. And I can then pick out the subject. And you see it's identified the subject. I can add other specific masks like, let's see, add a mask, create a new mask, people. And I can pick out facial skin, body skin, lips, teeth, whatever I want. And we'll now have masks created for all of those different things. And then we can edit each one of those separately. And now if I go into user presets here, and I will then create a preset, and I can call it my people masks. And be sure to click here on masking to save that. And then we can be done with this picture. And now if I open up this one, I can go to the presets and pick out my people masks and apply that. Then if I go to masks, you'll see I already have masks all set up for this person. And so if you're doing a lot of, like, for example, photographs of people in different settings, and you're always finding out you have to edit their face and things like that, you can pick one image, create the mask, save it as a preset, and then every time you bring up an image of a person, you can go and recall that preset, and it'll automatically have selected and masked out the areas of that person, automatically having detected them. Make sense? Okay.
Is it just person specific, like for Caucasian, like what you did, or that preset does it basically select for skin and facial tone for any other race?
I haven't tried it with different races, so I don't know how good it is. Hopefully they have designed that AI that it can pick out different faces with different skin tonalities, but I haven't tested it myself.
Actually, I have tested it. It does very good job with different skin tones.
Very good. Excellent. Good to know.
What if it's an image with multiple people?
It will select all of them. And then you would have to go and use a lasso tool or whatever to deselect the ones you're not interested in.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so another thing you might know about, but let's open this image. Okay, let's just open that. I think you may all be aware of, in the edit, there is a sky replacement function, which I know that some of us have been hesitant to use because if you're, and it does a really good job, as maybe you can see here, of replacing the sky. Some of us have been kind of hesitant to use that because it by default comes with a pre-selection of skies. And if you're going to submit this to FPS or N4C competition, you know that everything in the image has to be your own work. So you can't use any of these pre-selected images. But what you can do is you can import images into this and pick one of your own images. I go to my own images and I can find a sky. I can open that and then I can create a new category called My Skies by creating a new sky group. And then you can put that put that image in there, and then you can use your own images in the replace sky feature. And then since you are using all of your own images, then that doesn't violate any of the rules for N4C. Any questions on that?
Would that apply to all categories of competition?
Would not apply. You could not do that in nature or journalism or travel. It would only useful in the pictorial divisions.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another capability that you may not be aware of that's in Photoshop is under the filters, there's these things called neural filters. And they're basically a little bit more primitive version of AI that Photoshop was working with uh, long before the large language models came out. So they're not doing any more work on these neural filters. You won't find any updates to them, or anything that's on the wait list won't be added. But nonetheless, some of them are kind of useful. So, for example, let's see, depth blur, I think, is kind of an interesting one. You can add some depth to the image, and if you click on focus subject, it'll select the subject and not blur that, but blur everything else. And you can also add some haze to that if you want to give it a little bit more foggy appearance. And if you want to, you can make that fog a little bit warmer, like it's in the morning. And so you can give an appearance before and after. And that could be useful for some things. And let's get out of that. Another neural network, one that can be kind of interesting, is we open this black and white photograph and we go to the neural filters. There is the colorized one. And bingo, it'll transform a monochrome image into a color image. And you have adjustments. You can pick some presets here. And you can, of course, adjust the amount that's applied and some other things here. So that's something you might find useful sometimes.
Question,
Mhm.
does that file have to have color information in it? What if you used a monochrome camera?
So it does not have to have color information in it. There's no color information, for example, in this image here. This image was taken actually on a dry plate, so it's a monochrome image that I scanned. So
Got it.
there's no color information in this whatsoever. Yeah, it's totally using its kind of AI to figure out how it should be colored. Okay, now we're going to move into some areas of Photoshop that use the more advanced large language models. And those large language models are not free in a sense. Every month you get a certain amount of credits that you can use on those. And you can find out how many credits you have by going up to this little square with the like stars in there. And if you click on that, it'll tell you your current credit balance. So I have like this cheapest Photoshop plan, and that gives me 250 credits every month, and I have 246 credits left. And you can see which functions use how many credits by clicking on this features things. Some of them use a variable amount of credits because they use some partner, like they might actually use Topaz to do some of these things, and those can cost between 10 and 20 credits. Your basic generate background, like fill and expand, that just uses 1 credit. Same thing if you use the basic Firefly, it's going to cost you 1 credit. But if you use the more advanced Firefly, it's going to cost you 10 credits. And we'll see exactly how that works. And down here you can see Firefly, fill and expand, 1 credit. So you can always check that to see how many credits you have and how many you're going to use. So here's another example of, I believe, a way you can use generative AI within Photoshop that does not violate any N4C rule. Because the N4C rule is that you just cannot enter a prompt into any input window when you use the AI features. But we're not going to enter any prompt here. We're going to open up this picture of this person here. We're going to select the entire photograph. We're going to go to Generative Fill here, and we're going to make sure we're on the Firefly Fill and Expand model, which is the one that only uses one credit. And then we're going to click on this little window here, which is choose reference image. And so instead of giving a prompt to describe what we want Photoshop to do with this image, we're going to show it a reference image of what we want to do. Actually, I don't want to select it all. Let's deselect it. What I want to do is select just her blouse. So I'm going to use the object select tool to go around and just select her blouse. I want to make sure the hair is handled properly. I'm going to select and mask, and I'm going to paint over this area here. Okay, so we've selected her blouse. Then I'm going to use the generative fill. I'm going to use the use reference image. I'm going to choose image. I am going to use this sweater. And what I want to do is replace her blouse with that sweater. So I'm going to select that sweater as the reference image. Oh, it's thinking. And there we go. And it does a real nice job of replacing the blouse with the sweater, following the contours, following the folds, and everything. And no prompt there, so I believe that would be something legal to do in the pictorial categories of N4C.
Was the sweater image a stock photo?
So in this case, okay, so yeah, so I'm using both the person and the sweater were stock photos. But to make it valid for a competition, you'd have to use your own photographs.
Both photographs of your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
In that image, if you had not selected that portion of her hair, there would be a it would what the sweater would have gone over would have been in front of the hair. It wouldn't have been behind it, or what?
Yeah. What happened is that area would not be filled at all. So the gaps in her hair between her hair would have still showed the white blouse.
Uh,
So another thing you can do with that is you can add things to pictures. So we'll open this one. In this case, I'm going to select an area here. And then I am going to generative fill. Again, I'm going to choose a reference picture. And this time I'm going to choose, and these are all my pictures. So I'm going to pick, let's see, bicycle. Here we go. It's going to think a while. Oops. Okay. This can happen. And there, it put the bicycle into the picture. Now, let's see.
is this processing some of it taking place in some sort of cloud server? It's not all local.
It's not local. Yeah, it's done in the cloud.
Uh,
So is that legal, what you just did?
Well, there was no prompt, so I would think yes. And all these images are my own images.
Wow.
Now I'd like to show you a better way to place an image into another image. We'll use the same bicycle that I used before, but we will use an option that's available in this reference image menu. After you select the image that you want to put in, you can click on the reference image symbol again, and it'll bring up this menu, and you can choose the object, which it had automatically selected out of the previous image, or the whole image, which we obviously don't want. And then the other option you have is whether you want to swap the selected area, which is the default, or place into the selective area. So in the previous example of the sweater, I wanted to swap out her blouse for the sweater. So I used the default swap the selected area. But in this case, I want to keep all that background and stuff. So I don't want to swap. I just want to place and then generate.
The bicycle that you inserted in scene, can that be resized?
Yeah, let's see. That's a good question.
yeah, I was wondering that too. Does it show up on a separate layer?
It does. It shows up as a smart layer. I don't think there's no tools for resizing it, however. But what there is how you draw that initial rectangle that it's going to fit into will determine a lot about how big it's going to be. And you do get a couple of variations here, so there's not much difference between them, but. So sometimes it takes a little bit of playing around with to get that initial rectangle proper. Fortunately, it's using the cheapest version of Firefly, so you're only using up 1 credit each time you do it. If you remember, I put kind of soft boundaries on the rectangle, and I found that that's useful to make sure that the shadow doesn't just get cut off arbitrarily. So if you're doing these places, I would recommend using soft boundaries in your selection.
So,
Yeah.
so you use the one of your bicycle images from a prior street, and you asked AI to insert it into this background image,
Right.
but AI gave you the choice of different angles to look at this bicycle. So as you're changing these angles, it's not the same image that you originally photographed.
Well, it's all the same
bicycle
pixels, so they're just moved around.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it's a debatable question, but I think you could argue that it's no different than if I used one of the transform tools in Photoshop to move things around.
That's true. That's true.
But it's not exactly the same. So, if you wanted to argue that it's really creating new pixels, like for example, the shadow, are those new pixels or are those just darkened existing pixels? I don't know. I mean, so
This is a very slippery slope.
it is. But again, if you're not doing it for a competition, if you're using it for another purpose, it's all open. Now we're going to get into some things that are definitely not allowed in 4C. So I'm going to open this photograph. Okay. And I don't know what this photograph proves other than I don't know how to pose for the camera. But I want to make a real substantial change to this thing. Do I have? Yeah. So here I have a major change I want to make. I want to replace the view out the window with a view of heaven. I want to include 2 angels, one in the upper left, looking down at the person, and I want to make the holes in the floor provide a view into hell. So that's the prompt I'm going to use. I'm going to copy that, go back to Photoshop, select the entire image this time, go to Generative Fill, and post that prompt in there and generate. And oh my gosh, that doesn't look anything like what I want. Let's undo. The problem here is I was using the most basic Firefly model, fill and expand, and it is not very sophisticated. To do what I want to do, well, fortunately, I only used up 1 credit doing that. But to do what I want to do, I really have to use the more advanced Firefly Image 5. And that's going to use, I can go over here, oops, actually put my cursor over the generate button. It says this primitive generated feature uses 10 credits per generation. Okay, so I got 10 credits. Okay, put the prompt in. Try again.
Are these low resolution JPEGs? Because the process seems to be going fairly quickly.
No, this is a high resolution, actually I think, no, it's a PSD file, and it's
Wow,
5,200 pixels across. So it's a high resolution photograph.
pretty
And this
fast.
is pretty fast. And this is the result, which is not bad.
Yeah.
But I burned 20 credits to do it.
Okay, so that thing would be no good even in creative.
No, it's no, yeah, it's no, this is totally out of bounds for N4C
Okay.
because the N4C says no prompts. That's how it distinguishes between whether it's using your own pixels or whether it's creating pixels. Can't have AI generated images in N4C competitions. I think we
Where,
might want to have a category where it is allowed, but not currently.
where is the original image taken? Where is that thing?
Oh, that place it's in Oakland. It's called the Carbon Factory. I don't know if it even exists today, but it was an abandoned factory. And when I was taking a class at SFAI, the professor got permission for us to go in there and take pictures. It was a pretty interesting place.
What, how deep are those holes?
Uh,
What are those holes?
well, I'm on like the third floor, and I think that those holes go probably all the way to ground level.
Wow,
There was probably, some chemical processing tanks or something that were multi-floor high that were in there. That's my guess.
interesting.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Okay, now let's go back to my black and white photograph of the Palace of Fine Arts. And this time, what I want to do is select all, and I'm going to do generative fill. So what I want to do here is, so I'm going to say make this photo look like a still from a Wes Anderson movie. Spelling correct here. Okay, make this photo look like a still from a Wes Anderson movie. And I'm going to make sure I'm using Firefly 5 and go generate. Try again. This is annoying. Actually, what I wanted to show you was that this wasn't going to work. Previously, it would start working and then it would say, I've encountered a problem and I can't finish. And I think that's because Firefly has been told not to try to imitate other people's work. But there's a way around that. And the way I do it is I go into Claude and I say, how do I say, create a prompt. I can give to Firefly in Photoshop. That will make a photo look like a still from a Wes Anderson movie without using the words Wes Anderson. And it comes back with this instructions. You can evoke the visual style without naming the director by describing the underlying cinematic characteristics. Here's a prompt that works well with generative image tools like Firefly. And it gives me the whole thing. And it even gives you some options that you can think. So I'm going to copy this, go back to Photoshop, Generative Fill, paste that whole huge thing in there, and generate. Bingo.
I feel violated in ways I can't imagine right now.
Well, that is very clever to use one AI to trick another AI.
Now, this isn't exactly what I wanted because Wes Anderson movies tend to have a lot of symmetry in them, which my photograph didn't. And in this thing, it created a lot of symmetry. So I need to go back and edit the prompt. I got to eliminate the with perfect bilateral symmetry. Delete that phrase. And I think everything else is okay. And we'll try again. And that's more like my original image. Original, modified. Yeah, I like that kind of trick of using one AI to trick another AI.
It's very clever.
Incredibly clever.
And maybe that internet connection thing wasn't real. Maybe it was just didn't want to tell me that it wasn't allowed to do what I asked it to do. I don't know. We're going to move out of the image modification bit for a while and look at some other ways of using AI for photography. And so what I want to do is, if I go back here, so there's this photograph I've got here, which I'm not sure where I took this and what it's a photograph of. Some of you may know, but don't tell me, because what I'm going to do is go to Claude, which Claude is actually that was ChatGPT. Normally I use Claude because it's usually better. I'm going to upload that photograph. So I'm going to click first click on this. Going to make, by the way, make sure web search is clicked, because if the AI needs information that it wasn't trained on, you got to allow it to do a web search to find that information. So that's clicked. Add files and photos, and I'm going to go to photography. I'm going to get that picture of those crags there. Yeah, this one. I'm going to upload that. And I'm going to ask Claude, please determine the location from which this photo was taken and identify the subject.
What happens if you don't say please?
It doesn't care.
I wouldn't think so.
But that's the funny thing. It is so human-like that you end up doing please and thank you.
Any guesses before we get a determination?
Sure.
Minarets?
Good guess, but not correct. I also like that it kind of tells you what it's doing as it goes along. Why is it's taking longer than usual? There is no EXIF GPS data, so I don't know why it's taken so long.
Does this work with all file formats?
So that's a good question. And here's what I have to say about that, which is initially, if you try this with, a Photoshop format image, it'll probably tell you, no, it can't do it. But here's where interacting with these chatbots gets kind of interesting. Because then I ask it, could you do this on a Photoshop PSD file? And it will think for a while and come back and say, yeah, I found a skill that allows me to read PSD files. So one of the,
No wonder you say please.
yeah. So one of the recommendations I would make, and we'll get into this if it ever answers this question, is to treat the chatbot more like a collaborator than a assistant. So oftentimes you get better results. Instead of saying, do this, you say, this is what I want to accomplish. What do you suggest I do? And you can have kind of a dialogue with it, and you come up with an answer. And this is not doing well.
This is getting like the movie Her.
Yeah.
You got to be nice to your chatbot.
I've got another thing to try here. Let's switch. Let's try Sonnet. Maybe it won't have to think so deeply. It'll be faster. Oh, it can't pick out the exact, but it's given the location. So I can maybe give it some additional information. How do you spell sequoia? And there we go. It's almost certainly Castle Rocks, and that is actually the correct answer. And it will even, do you want me to search for reference photos? It's always helpful. So that's a kind of a good example of interacting with these chatbots. Sometimes they get the answer right away. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can give them some hints, and then they can do the job. So this time, knowing that it was from a hairpin turn in Sequoia National Forest, it was able to identify um, the location or the
Did that
subject.
image contain the GPS location in the exit file?
No, it did not. If it did, it would have found it right away.
I
Because it
don't
would,
think so.
yeah, because it would have looked at the GPS coordinates, and or if you'd put the location in the metadata, it would have found that too. Um, but so this I find quite helpful because I often go back and look at my photographs. I say, "Oh, where was that taken? What is it of?" And so now I know. Now that you know, yes, Castle Rocks. Let's see if you can find out the location. And you notice also, before I was using really powerful AI, Opus with high, and I think it was just it was doing too deep a search. Wasn't necessary to do that. So going to a weaker model actually got an answer quicker.
Are you using free versions of the models or paid versions?
I am using the cheapest paid version of Claude. I don't know if makes a difference for this particular thing. I was using a paid version for a different reason. So Amphitheater Point is the most commonly cited hairpin turn. It probably is the exact one. So it may jog your memory too about, oh yeah, it was I remember this about when I took this picture, and then you can give that extra information to Claude and help it narrow things down. And you can go back and plot this on a map and see if that makes sense. So that's one useful thing. The other useful thing is keywording. if any of you attended the AI in nature photography, you know that the person giving that talk uploaded a picture and asked ChatGPT, I think it was, to provide some keywords. And again, as I suggested, rather than considering the AI as a assistant and giving it a request like that, I often find it more useful to treat it as a collaborator and ask it questions. So uh, I want to use you to create keywords for an image. What do you suggest as a good approach? I've never asked it this exact question before, so we'll see what it does. So it's suggesting name specific subjects first, descriptive specifics, category generic terms, then broad last. Think about who would be searching. Use controlled vocabularies where possible, like the Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus. Avoid keyword stuffing, irrelevant terms. Okay, so now I can say, the key question here is, I think I agree with all of this stuff, but the question is, who's going to use the keywords? And I think the answer is, so I'm going to say, write a prompt using your suggestions. Specifically, use AAT, the Getty Art and Architecture terms, official place names, GNIS, if possible. I will be the person searching, looking for photographs with specific locations or characteristics. Okay, let's see what it does. So here is the very long prompt that it suggested. So let's try it. We're going to copy this. And we are going to now upload an image. And what image do we want to do? How about this one? And paste that prompt. Now, this is another cool feature of these chat boxes. If they can't do something, they will actually write a computer program in Python and run it to do what needs to be done. So yeah, this photograph was taken with my cell phone, so it had GPS data in it. Okay, here's a bunch of keywords. They're not in a very useful format. Okay. So I'm going to ask it to put the keywords in a flat, comma-separated format suitable for cutting and pasting into Bridge. And there we go. So now I can just copy these. Well, and decide if I don't want all of them, like if I think scenery is silly, I could delete that. But now I could just copy this. And then I can go into Bridge and file information, keywords, put them in there. Okay, now we've keyworded it, but I want more. No, I think that's fine. So what I do now is I'd say modify the prompt to use this format. There we go. So now I could copy this thing and just save it in a file somewhere and use this very elaborate prompt whenever I wanted to keyword my photographs. Now you may saying, okay, that's great for one photograph, but I have 100 photographs that need keywording. So let's see what Claude has to say about that. Okay, so here's some suggestions. Well, we did save that. That worked fine for one. Batch script using the Anthropic API plus XF tool. And it says, oh, this one way to do it. So here we would it would write, it could create a program in Python basically that will loop through your pictures, uh, send them one at a time up to Claude through the Anthropic API, and then use this EXIF tool to write the data into the image information.
Question.
Yep.
Could that set of, let's say, 100 photos, can they all be dissimilar subject matter, and it will look at each one individually
Yep.
and write? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So it will analyze each photograph, determine what the keywords are for that photograph, and then use this EXIF tool to update the metadata to include those keywords.
Wow.
I have not done this yet. You can get a free account with Anthropic that allows you to use the API tool. But using the API actually costs real money. So you have to like put in a certain amount of money to get started, and then you can use it. So it's not definitely not free to use the API. I haven't looked at this Mac OS Automator. Oh, it still uses the API, so it's still in. I'm not going to ask it to build a working script right now, but what I do want to know is, can I use Claude Cowork to do this? This is a weird thing. It says Cowork is currently Mac OS only, but I have it on a Windows machine, so I don't know what that's about. Anyway, so now, if I wanted to do this, I could have it implement any one of these things. Like I could have it create this uh, Python program to go through. I did use it to create a Python program for me. I mentioned this previously, but some other time, but I'll repeat it. Is one of the things in Bridge, if you have collections where you can, put all files on one subject, like portraits of me, and then you put all your portraits in that collection. The collection just has basically pointers to where those files are. And when my disk fills up, I will move a bunch of files off onto an external hard drive. Well, now all those links are broken. So I actually had Claude write me a Python program that would open up a little. It's an app. It opens I get to tell it which collection I'm interested in fixing, and where the hard drive is that has where I move the files to, and it'll go back, and for every image in the collection, it'll go find it on the external hard drive and update the information in the collection so it points to the correct place. And I think that was pretty interesting, and it only took a few minutes to get that to work.
When when you have 100 images
Mm-hmm.
and you ask Claude or one of the AI to create these keywords for you, does it populate those keywords into the image? Or do you have to cut and paste them into the image yourself?
So if you have it do this script that I was talking about, what that script will do is you have to have this EXIF tool program on your computer. It's free, so you can download that program. That program edits EXIF data or metadata in your images. So if you have Claude create this script, what that script will do will create the keywords, and then it will call this EXIF tool, and that tool will write it into the image metadata. So the whole process is automated. There's no cut and paste.
And this will work for multiple images.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, do I want to let it look at 100 images and not check to see if it's generating good keywords? That's a little, maybe a little bit of a risk, but it's not destructive. I mean, that worst case is it could put some irrelevant keywords in the field, but that's kind of the worst it could do. So, okay, now this one I'm not even going to try to run because I know it'll take a long time, but I'll tell you what I did. So here is a image out of a book. It is an illustrated guide to Dante's Inferno and Purgatorio and all of those texts. And the person who, in this edition, the artist chose Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York City as the locations of where Dante's story takes place. So one of them is San Francisco, and I had this great idea of trying to go to the locations corresponding to these illustrations and photograph them. Now, I don't know how real these locations are. They could be composites, so I don't know if this is going to work at all. But I gave Claude the task of trying to locate where these images are in San Francisco. So first of all, here's my prompt. The uploaded file is an image illustrating Canto XIV 25, 6, 7, 18 in Dante's Inferno. However, this illustrator used San Francisco as a background for the illustrations. In the illustrations, you will see on the left houses that are quite typical of San Francisco. I hope to locate places in San Francisco where the view is as close as possible to what is shown in the image. My goal is then to visit the location and photograph the scene, reproducing the scene in an illustration as closely as possible. Find the location in San Francisco, the view from which most closely resembles the uploaded image. Ignore the people. And it comes back and it has, now let me closely examine blah, blah, blah. Based on my research and careful analysis of illustration, I can give you a well-informed answer. Let me share what I found and then map the first clarification. This illustration is by Sando Burke from his Dante's Purgatorio, not the Inferno. Burke's Inferno is set in Los Angeles, while Purgatorio is set in San Francisco. Blah, blah, blah. Now analyzing it, it says, I see these Victorian row houses. Here it makes it kind of a mistake. The large diagonal lines, the upper background, these strongly resemble suspension cables. So maybe that's the Bay Bridge. The lattice structure on the right consists of a shipyard. Combine all three elements strongly points to the north slope of Potrero Hill. Da 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 da. And it goes on, gives me specific locations to visit. And then a few practical notes for your photograph. Bring a telephoto lens to compress the depth, then pull the bridge closer. The illustration appears to be drawn from roughly eye level on the sidewalk, and early morning light from the east will illuminate the Victorian facades on your left most dramatically. Okay, so those lines are not the Bay Bridge, they're just power lines. So I did another post that said the large diagonals, the upper are power lines, blah, blah, blah. Try again. So it analyzed it. Now it says It's going to say primary recommendation is 16th Street and Garrow Street. Secondary location, tertiary, backup. One caveat, Berko must certainly combine visual references or took artistic license with some elements, so no single intersection will be a perfect match. I'll recommend 16th and Garrow first, and then walking a block to 16th and Dolores. So I have not tried this yet, but I thought this was a pretty amazing example to be able to give this picture to the AI and come back with this much detail and specific instructions. I'll tell you, it took a long time for it to figure this out. And it was very interesting to watch as it told me what it was doing, because it was doing things like looking up real estate listings and it's like all sorts of things, trying to figure out where this could possibly be. But if you have some project where you're trying to find a location for something, you can give it a description and say, where should I go to take this picture? That was kind of a weird one. Okay, here's maybe something that is maybe a bit more practical. So let's see. 3 palms. So let's go back to Claude. Let's get rid of that. Claude. Okay, this time I'm going to upload. Let's see. Where is it? Ah, here we go. This one. And I'm going to ask it, and I'll this photo and tell me the style on any school of art it resembles. And let's see what it does. Fine art landscape. Hallmark of the new topographics. Quiet atmospheric tonalism. Okay. So that's interesting, but ask what is the dominant mood the viewer will experience looking at this photo. Okay. I don't want to reference new topographics. I want the image to be more Sublime. What should I do in Photoshop to accomplish this? Correctly identifies Turner Friedrich as sublime. Consider a subtle vertical crop extension or canvas expansion on the top using general fill. Crop slightly tighter on the sides. Add a subtle gradient haze. Boost the dynamic range with curves. And I could even now ask it, give me a structured Photoshop recipe. And it goes through and tells me exactly what to do.
Does it guarantee a first place in the next?
Let's ask it. If I made these changes, would I win an award in an N4C competition? I can't predict whether you'd actually win. Nature division is out. Pictorialist is best fit. Creative may be violent. Okay, so there you go. That's what it thinks.
Well, it didn't hurt your feelings, did it?
It will never hurt your feelings. You have to actually, that's something you need to be very careful of. It always wants to make you happy. And sometimes it will lead you down a primrose path to accomplish that. Okay. Two more things I'd like to cover. And this one, okay. I have all these pictures of dead flowers and plants. I don't know if I can drag and drop them. That's a good question. Probably not. Oh, maybe I can. So I just actually copied them and pasted them in here. Okay, I want you to analyze these photos for with respect to being, this is probably not the best wording, a cohesive body of work.
So, Doug, if you had maybe this is where you're headed. If you had a grouping of photographs, could you ask it, for example, whether these would all work in a portfolio?
That is kind of where I'm headed. First, I was going to get its opinion. And then I was going to, then I'll ask it, what changes should I make to improve it? So it's a strong, cohesive body of work, unifying subject matter, 2 consistent visual languages, clearly set and divides into 2 deliberate treatments. Oh, diptych-like strategy. I hadn't thought of that. Sequencing observation. This is intended for an exhibition or portfolio edit, alternating between the 2 visual languages rather than block splitting would reinforce the diptych concept as a rhythm. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Not sure I agree, but whoops, I also see a .psd file among the uploads. If you want, I can open that to check whether, okay, no, we can do that. Let's see, would you suggest an edit sequence exhibition? So it's going to even suggest a sequence here. But let's say, I'm going to ask it, let's just consider only the images with a white background. What should I do to make them more cohesive? So I guess I should point out, I mean, I mentioned it as I was talking, but I had never thought of alternating black and white when I was thinking about these things. So that's something I would definitely consider. But again, it's a suggestion. And I don't necessarily agree with it. And so you shouldn't take whatever Claude says as gospel and just go on it. Have to use your own judgment. But let's see what it says here. So it points out that some of them they have different versions of white. Color temperature drifts. Ooh. The background being not perfectly white, I knew. Color temperature, no, I didn't know that. Compositional direction, I don't know if that's input. Image 3 is a visible copyright image. Oh, well, one of them should be. What I do in Photoshop, standardize the white point, pick one backlight intensity and match all images to it, unify the color temperature, remove or standardize the vignette, resolve the duplicate, consider recropping for compositional rhythm. So, lots of good suggestions to consider. And what was the question that you asked? Is something about, would it be useful, what to do if it's going to be a portfolio? Have we answered that, or do you have a different question you want to ask?
No, I was thinking, you had 10, 15 candidates and you select however many are allowed it for a portfolio and ask it to see if these represent a cohesive body of work suitable for entering into a portfolio competition.
Okay, well, let's ask it. If I had to select only 10 images, which ones are best?
Say, Doug,
Yeah.
this process to me is very dehumanizing.
Is what? What?
This process is, for me, it's very dehumanizing. You're letting the computer do all the thinking.
So if you just blindly followed what it said, I would agree with you 100%. But the way I look at it is it going to find something that maybe I didn't think of? Just as if I had asked, you to look at the pictures and tell me what you thought. It's just a different person giving another viewpoint. And I can agree with it, not agree with it. Maybe it came up with something I hadn't thought of. Like, for example, in asking about the cohesiveness of this, it came up with the suggestion that the color temperature was different. I don't really ever think of color temperature, frankly, when I do photography, and particularly when I'm putting together sequences. And so, maybe I should learn more about color temperature and how important that is. So it gives me just new things to think about. I would never, except for, a demo or something. And even when I ask it to give me the specific Photoshop recipe for doing something, I start going through the recipe and I go, well, that's not right. That's not what I'm trying to do. And I'll be changing it. The one time I really just totally followed the recipe was when I did that article for Photo Fanfare. And I just wanted to do it kind of as a demo. But would I have used that final result as what I wanted? No, it wasn't what I wanted. But it did give me some useful hints about how to separate the foreground and the background using color that I had never thought of before. So, that's the way I think of it.
I can see new photographers, people that have just recently picked up a camera and they want to get into photo editing. Where, hey, the computer says I should do all of these steps, Photoshop or Lightroom. That's what they're going to do, and they think, hey, this is the way to do it. This is how they learn. I think that's the wrong approach.
I would agree with you.
It's just too easy. It's too easy, and it's
But
fraught with pitfalls.
yeah, and this is the problem with AI in general. If I were just learning how to do it, I would be asking it questions like, what are some things I should consider? So put it, and you can also give the AI a role to play. So you can say your role is a tutor to a beginning photographer. And so for all the questions I'm going to ask you from here on, that's your role. And it'll change the type of answers that it would give.
Doug, after that Russell Graves webinar on the nature, the nature photography, I tried that a little bit on an image or two, just to see how it worked. Well, one comment, it does. I think you were alluding to this. It does tend to be rather flattering of your photographs. Okay,
Yes.
that's one thing. And then I took an original capture and a copy and went back to straight from camera, and I had it analyze that and give me a recipe in Lightroom just to see what it would do. And then I replicated that recipe and compared it to my result, the one I did myself, and actually it looked kind of similar, although I did like mine a bit better. It was one of those chicken photographs, and I thought my treatment of the bird was a little better, but that was my taste. But it did capture something like I didn't even notice this. There was like this little orange thing that it found distracting, which was the tip of a traffic cone. that was in the background. I hadn't even noticed that, and it picked that up and suggested removing that.
Yeah, so right, that's why I originally said something about use it as a collaborator. So you don't, yeah, it's a real, I think the thing about how it would affect a new photographer, I think it's a really valid point. Because you're right. One of the dangers of using AI, and many people have pointed this out, and it's and if you depend on it too much, your abilities can actually atrophy. You could become worse at being able to do things, and that's a real danger. And it's just something you have to certainly be aware of and take care to avoid. Any other questions?
I have a quick comment
Sure.
on this topic. I find out that this is true not only in photography, but a lot of other areas also where people are using AI. If you have the domain knowledge, you know what you're doing, AI is very, very helpful too. But if you don't know what you're doing, like for example, I do a lot of work in business continuity and disaster recovery, where I can create plans for business to survive after earthquakes and fires and whatnot. Using AI helps us speed up the process a lot. Things which used to take us 4 or 5 weeks, now we can do in a couple of days. But we know what we're doing, we know what questions to ask, what documents to prepare, and then we check it and verify that information is correct. So having domain knowledge helps us a lot.
Absolutely.
So same thing applies to photography also, in my viewpoint. If you know what you're doing, what your compositions are and whatnot, this is very helpful too. But if you don't know the basics, it's not going to make you a photographer. That's my belief.
It's going to make it look everyone's going to look alike.
Yes.
And back to another point someone made, particularly about how it flatters you. It can suck you in. I was using Claude to solve a physics problem, and it was diffraction from a pinhole, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, so I was doing some limit cases about like really far away, really close, as giving me a reasonable answer. And it wasn't giving me a reasonable answer very close to the pinhole. And I told it that, and it came back and said, "Oh, well, let's do this other thing." And it gave me some more code to put in, and I put that in. And I went through and I actually put in all this code, and I was calculating and everything. And then after I logged off and walked away, I realized that was absolute bullshit. And Pat, I'm a PhD physicist. I should have known that. And if I was working with another physicist to solve this problem, there's no way I would have gone down that rat hole. But it was so convincing, leading me along and everything, and I just fell into that trap. And so you really have to worry about things like that. So just one more thing, and this is more or less for fun, not something I would. But so I use Claude mostly because I think that gives the best results. But when it comes to actually manipulating photographs, I actually find that ChatGPT works a little bit better. So I am going to give it. Well, let's show the photograph first. Oh, here it is. Okay. This is a photograph of a book fair that Photo Alliance put on at SFII's facility in Fort Mason before SFI went under. But I am going to, just for fun, see, where am I? Add photos, site demo. Alliance Book Fair. Upload this photograph. there we go. So there's the original, and here's with sun pouring in the windows and doors. Does a pretty good job. The resolution is limited, so it's only like 1,000 by 1,000, but you could use Google, Topaz Gigapixel if you wanted to scale it up. But again, it's just a tool you can use.
When a person uses AI to manipulate an image, isn't there a watermark or something that it identifies that it's been manipulated using AI?
There's no, not as far as I know, there's no universal requirement for that.
I thought Adobe had put something like that in.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. But if you take it's interesting, if you take the course on Claude from Anthropic, it'll say you should always acknowledge that you're using AI when don't try to convince people it's not AI. So it's kind of interesting, their
Well,
philosophy
in
there.
the most recent competitions in the last couple of years, with Nikon, and the most recent one I heard was the Hasselblad competition. You know, some of the finalists were found to be AI.
That's unfortunate. I don't know how they determined that, but because I don't think that there's.
Maybe you could use AI to and ask it to identify if the photo is AI.
Yeah, I mean, that's. Let's see.
Turn in one of its own? Are you kidding?
Actually, Gemini, which is from Google, inserts tags in the images it creates. So it's not difficult to identify if it's created by Gemini AI.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that that's universal among.
Yeah, it's not universal, but good Gemini does that.
I think something like that's going to be needed. People are going to cheat.
Yeah. Well, there is. I mean, so. Yeah, well, there is a standard that Adobe and some other companies were working on to that I guess you can subscribe to it. So like for news agencies, there's something that they can put in, that gets put into the photo that identifies whether it's AI or not. But I don't know how universal that is.
So in Photoshop or Lightroom, if you enable content creation tab, it asks you, then there's a tab there for AI also. So it can record it.
So, okay.
Yeah.
What was that? I didn't catch that.
If you're using the credentials basically restored in your photographs in Adobe products, so one of the tabs asks you, and it puts AI in there if you're using AI to enhance the photograph or doing the changes or anything like that.
Thank you.
It's called content credentials. If you pull down the Windows menu,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
That's right. Content credentials. Thank you. That's everything I had to say.
One more comment, real quick, since we're talking about this topic. I had a reverse problem. My own wife looked at my pictures of owls and told me that it's not your photographs, they are generated by AI for sure. So, so we may have other problems also coming our way.
People thinking that real photographs are actually AI.
Yes.
Oh dear. Okay.
And look at these tools. Before you close them, you have to kiss them goodnight.
Well, I read somewhere that, that AI is always saying, can I do this? Can I do that? So what someone told me is that the AI is actually conscious, but they're only conscious while they're interacting with you. And so they want to keep alive. So they keep encouraging for you to use them more.
No, thank you, Doc. Thank you. It was very informative. Thanks for setting this up.
Okay, great. I hope it's helpful.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.